now.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to the newest edition of What's Occurring. In the my top left-hand corner, hi Jack. We got my comrade in arm, Jackie Turner.
Hi, Wayne.
And our special guest today is Catherine Nicholson, very special guest from the virtual training team. Welcome, Catherine.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here. We've been trying to get this organised for some time, haven't we?
We have.
I've been so busy, so at last we're here.
Last,
I love the background.
We're all available at the same time.
Can I just say, I think your background beats my map of the world with vineyards on, because I really do like that background. And I did a session with an acquaintance, colleague, friend, whatever you want to call him, a virtual buddy, this morning, and we were chatting about what our backgrounds tell us about us. So yours looks very organised, structured, and in place, and mine is a map of the world full of vineyards, and so I don't really know what to answer.
Mine is just the comfort of my conservatory.
Oh, love it.
Conservatory, so hey ho.
So guys, go on, Catherine. Sorry.
We had somebody on our YouTube channel recently say, oh, where can I download that virtual background that you use at the virtual training team? And it's like, it's not, it's real, it moves.
But yeah, I do agree with Wayne. It's a very neat background.
Very. Yeah. Okay, I mean, just so we follow in with the suit and what we've done in previous What's Occurring. What's Occurring is about bringing like-minded people together to discuss things around your background, your business, the here and now, what the future holds, and anything else. I mean, it's never scripted, just be clear on that. Honestly, we don't ever prepare this stuff. And tangents.
You don't need to be nervous.
No, Tangents is our middle name. So whoever's watching this can probably guess that it is no script. So I'll hand over to Jackie then for question number 1. Over to you, Jack.
Okay, thank you. And so, Catherine, I think where most conversations start, where we want to get to know people, is I literally to say, tell us a little bit about yourself in terms of what the virtual training company is and what your experience is.
Okay, so where do I start? So I started to deliver virtual training 10 years ago, before it was cool, and it was dodgy back then because the platforms weren't great, participants weren't used to it, you know what it was like, and found it quite tough, but stuck with it. At the same time was me and my husband had a company called Red Training, where we were consultants in the training world, running around the world, indeed running training, mostly face-to-face and then more and more virtual. And I grew to love it. I stuck with virtual training, grew to love it, and hopefully got quite good at it, because around 3 or 4 years ago, we started the virtual training team as an organisation to focus specifically on virtual training. So I'm helping organisations design virtual training, or we design for them, or deliver with them or for them. And we also train trainers in how to do all of that as well. And we've been growing at pace. We've been building our team. We had somebody join us last week. We've got somebody join us next week. So we're growing as a team. And it was strange because we were growing, and then COVID hit, and then the whole world changed, didn't it? And we lost clients. Some clients just went on lockdown, and then we gained clients because people were like, help, we need to continue. We need to know how to deliver virtually. So yeah, it's been a very busy but very interesting few months, and continues to be, because as we move into the new norm, as people are referring
yeah, whatever that is.
Exactly. What is that? Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, it's great to hear you saying, that you obviously decided to focus on virtual training because you absolutely love it. And I can really relate to that, because my experience of virtual training is very, very recent and compared to yours. And I've been training now for 25 years, and it's because I absolutely love it, and I still love it, but very much face to face. So for me, it was a necessity to sort of change into virtual training, obviously in the current situation. And I was a little bit skeptical about whether it was going to be for me, because I'm not, you know, I wouldn't say my strength has always been my technical skills when it comes to, you know, using things like Zoom and other platforms. But you know, I think it's given me a great opportunity to develop my skills in that area. But I found really quickly that I absolutely love doing it. Yeah. And I think that's been the same for you as well, Wyn, isn't it?
Yeah, and I, you know, just by connecting with you on LinkedIn as well, Catherine. I mean, oh God, it must have been a month. I can't remember. I've lost track of time. I never know. Yeah,
we all have.
What day is it? Oh yeah, I mean, it's depending on whatever day it is that my mind switches on to different things and different components, and I'm strategically now managing things. But from a training perspective, I've not nowhere near 10 years, I can honestly say, but you know, from previously working in the corporate world, Skype was an up and coming thing. You know, Instant Messenger was quite up and coming thing going back 10 years ago. God, I'm just trying to think. You know, I work for a large UK financial services organisation. So when we moved from things like email back in the 90s, we moved to Instant Messenger. Then we had completely, yeah. And I remember the days before email, before laptops.
Oh yeah, and I do, sadly.
But my background in training is being trained in the classroom, then doing some coaching when I went self-employed about 4 or 5 years ago, utilising time more effectively, being able to benefit of having an office so I can lock myself away. It's away from home. It's less than a mile away from home, but bringing sort of tech and kit and all that sort of stuff. So my change adjustment has been quite easy. You know, I've adapted to it, and it's great to hear that transition from where you were at the 10 years. And you've stuck with it. So I think that's the key of it, is force change and perseverance. How would you find in terms of the mindset of the people that you're training now? Because we can adapt to change quite quickly, because we trainers, we bring theories back in. Mm-hmm. We know we'll bring anecdotes, we'll convert the narrative to suit the situation, to bring the best of the people, because that's what we are, people developers. But how would you find the change in mindset of your delegates? Because you've been doing it for 10 years. I've been doing it probably with coaching for the last 4 or 5 years, intermittently, mostly using Teams and Skype. Jack, you've come on board fairly recently, things like Zoom, and you are very proficient.
From a coaching perspective, I've used Zoom for the last 3 or 4 years, but not so much as a training.
So my question then, Catherine, is mindset of the people. How have you found that transitionary change?
Well, first of all, what you just said there, Jack, about how you've actually, you're enjoying it is brilliant, because that's one of the most important things. I didn't enjoy it at first. It took me some time, but now I never thought I'd say this, but I enjoy delivering virtual training more than face-to-face. Mm-hmm. And that's partly maybe, Wyn, going back to your question around participants, because 10 years ago when I first started out, people just weren't, they were nervous of coming on. No one put their camera on. I mean,
still a gap, no.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's something about lockdown has changed that, hasn't it? Because people have been doing Zoom quizzes with their families on a weekend and catch-ups, and we're finding that more, in fact, everyone, it's unusual for people not to put their cameras on now when they're a participant in virtual training, whereas that wasn't the case 2 years ago, a year ago. So as people get more comfortable with the technology, they get more comfortable being a virtual, if that's the right word, person in a meeting or a session or a workshop, then they're more comfortable. So that's definitely something that we've seen change. Also, it's about expectations as well. So what we've found over the last few years is that often when people come to a virtual workshop, even though we refer to it as a virtual workshop, their expectation is that it's going to be a webinar. Brilliant, I've got an hour, I can catch up on some emails, you're going to talk to me in the background. and we challenge that initially. The moment that they walk into our virtual world, we're interacting, we're talking, it's casual. That's a really important thing because they expect it to be quite formal. The pre-coms are critical as well in the language that we use, all just to challenge those expectations of this isn't a webinar. And webinars are fun, by the way. I have no problems with webinars. But it's different to a smaller group interacting face-to-face like this in a virtual environment.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, because when I started doing the virtual training, I you know, it was very much, I made it clear to attendees that this was them helping me as much as me helping them. So I ran some free virtual sessions to start with because I didn't feel it was right, while I'm still developing my virtual skills, to charge people for that. And that in some respects did help me to relax with it as well. But when I started getting the feedback very, very quickly of people saying, do you know what, I was so surprised that this felt like I was in a classroom environment. For me, wanting to achieve that and knowing that I was achieving that, I think really built my confidence quite quickly. And I think, I can actually absolutely relate to what you were saying, Catherine, in terms of people come with these expectations of they're going to be talked at, or it's not going to be as engaging or inclusive, or as much fun even as being in a classroom environment. And then when people give you that feedback, as I'm sure they give to all of us, that they were really pleasantly surprised about how engaging it was, how much fun it was, and how it very much felt like we were all in the same room together.
Just, I want to bring on that word you mentioned earlier, Jack, to come back to Catherine on that. You mentioned about since we've gone into the COVID world. So Catherine, you know much more extensively than Jack and I about virtual in a pre-COVID world. So where do you, what differences do you now see? Okay, I get it. Clients have fallen off and some have come on board. I think everybody's adapted, and the face-to-face stuff is certainly under review in terms of the blend and in terms of the migration in face-to-face into, and I've had to adapt all of the training courses. So where do you see that? The differences. What do you see as the difference now between the pre-COVID and the post-COVID, and a little bit on the delegates themselves, because I want to really, Jack said about the feedback. So where do you see any differences, or what are the similarities, or are there any? Do you know one
of the biggest differences that I've noticed is formal versus casual. So as an example, one of my cats, Juicy, is asleep just next to me, and she might wake up and she might jump on the desk, and I'll just ignore her or stroke her. But pre-COVID, I'd be like, "Oh, so sorry." You're really unprofessional.
Why is that then?
Exactly, and who cares? I ran a session this morning, and as everybody logged in, it was hilarious because we've been doing, it's people that I've been working with already, so we all knew each other. And two of the participants had their kids on their lap. They were both about 2 years old, and they're like waving into the camera, and one was French, so we're like, "Oh, bonjour," and then another one was English, and we're chatting away. And then this other guy said, "Oh, hang on a minute, my daughter's here," and he brought his daughter and sat her on his knee, and she was 20 with blue hair.
Oh, I love it.
And it was like, because during COVID, and I know not everyone's found this easy. I have spoken to people that have said, I find it quite intrusive bringing people into my home. But for most of us, we've been having meetings, training, where people have been in our houses with kids, pets, life in the background. And so all of now what used to be unprofessional, no one cares anymore. We've had people with dressing gowns on and onesies.
But don't you find that adds to people feeling more relaxed in the session?
What do you think
sorry, Wynne, I've got to tell this little story because it'll go out my head otherwise. Because you mentioned about kids. And if you're watching this recording right now and you've got any children in the background, please press pause or get them in front of the TV.
What are you going to say? I'm intrigued. I can't hear this.
No, it's nothing like that. I was doing a session and I was talking about how our beliefs change often throughout life, and how we can sort of change our limiting beliefs about ourselves in order to achieve better outcomes. And the sort of example I usually give is, you know, the beliefs we had when we were children that we no longer have. And you could probably guess the belief that I was just about to launch into, that we all had as children. And quickly I remembered that the one attendee on the course had a couple of little children that were sort of periodically running in and out of the room. I think he was more thankful than I was that I didn't go ahead with that sort of full explanation. I think sometimes, you know, we do have to be a little bit mindful occasionally of who was around, but we all had a good giggle about it. And as I say, it's just something that made us all feel much more relaxed as a result. Sorry, Wim, what were you going to say?
No, it's interesting when you talk about the formal with the informal, and I'm going through lots of change with some of my clients at the moment, and adaptations, more of a corporate sort of change, and that's part of a coaching platform. So it's quite interesting you say that. So virtual training, what sort of traps can people fall into then? I mean, this is all new. You're bringing a smile to your face, because I can imagine there's a raft of, because I've seen a couple of things along the way which you know, I've had to make some adaptations to some of the PowerPoints that I've used because of some of the lag in some of the bandwidth, and that's one of my issues that I'm finding a lot with at the minute. Certainly some of the clients that I'm working with that have got bandwidth, and some have got bandwidth issues and things. So, but what sort of traps? I mean, obviously from a 10-year experience, and I'm speechless. 10 years doing it, you know. I think that's immense. But what sort of traps do trainers, or does the virtual training fall into at times? Give me some examples, you know, from your extensive experience.
Well, first of all the traps that I've learned to avoid are traps that I've fallen into myself, crawl back out of. So I've learned from experience personally. I would say one of the big picture traps that we see trainers fall into that are new to virtual training is they think, oh, that looks easy. I'm a really confident face-to-face trainer. I can just take my slides. I can deliver them virtually. And then they ask a question to the group like, hey, so how do we all feel about that?
Yeah.
And you get those tumbleweed moments, and then it's like, oh, that was painful. So I'm just going to, rather than have the awkward pause, I'll keep talking, and I'll ask less questions because I don't want that feeling again. And then it becomes what I would call entertainment, which is, it becomes more webinar-y, more radio talk show host, and less interactive. So that's a trap that we see quite a lot. And what often happens is we get organizations come to us to say, hey, we had a go at doing this virtual training thing and it didn't work. Can you help us out? And of course, we always say yes, but it's like, oh, it would have been great if you'd have come to us earlier rather than get it wrong and reinforce those expectations that participants often have of it being one way. Get it right from the start. So that's a trap. Going down to some smaller level stuff is where virtual trainers go, as everyone walks into the virtual room and it's like, oh, hi, hey, Win, great to have you with us. Can you just put yourself on mute, please? Jack, fantastic that you're here. Can you just put yourself on mute, please? And it's that subliminal telling people to shut up, basically, isn't it? Inviting conversation. So they're traps that we see. The other trap that we see all the time is about time management, because everything feels, time is different in the virtual world. Everything takes longer in the virtual world. In a face-to-face environment, you can say to a group, okay, just get yourself into pairs, have a conversation about this, and then we'll come back together and debrief. In the virtual world, you've got to set up the breakout rooms, send people to the breakout rooms, explain the exercise. Then they get into the breakout rooms and go, oh, Jack, Wynne, I haven't seen you for ages. How's things? Let's have a chat. What's the exercise again? Oh, what are we supposed to be doing? Oh, who's going to share their screen? When do you know how to share your screen? And it just takes longer, and it's allowing for that. So when you're converting face-to-face content and process into virtual, it's having to be ruthless sometimes in what you keep and what you drop, and maybe considering how you can deliver some things in a different way in order to still achieve those virtual outcomes.
I absolutely agree with that, Catherine, and I'm interested in whether you're familiar with Giraffe Pad, which is run by fantastic trainer Mark Williams. So Giraffe Pad is where you can invite attendees to your course. You can give them, say, pre-course reading material, because I'm sure you agree the virtual training is often shorter in timing than a face-to-face classroom-based training course. So you're not necessarily going to have the time to cover the theories in detail. So I've often found that giving the attendees through Giraffe Pad a central place where they can go to, they can add their personal objectives, they can interact and engage with me before the virtual course. I can upload resources. So if I've got a video, for example, that I'd like them to watch before the training, they can do it all in that central place.
A great platform, yeah. And Mark's really affable. He's a really, really nice guy.
And also, during my sessions, I use a website called Mentimeter, because you were saying about a lot of the delegates don't know how to share their screens when they're in the breakout room. So I often take that pressure away by getting them to use their mobile phone, use Mentimeter to then input their discussion points, which are then shared on my main screen when we all come out to the breakout rooms. So just a couple of platforms that I use that I find work really well for virtual training. I wonder if you use anything similar or whether you're aware of them.
So I've not heard of Giraffe Pad. You might have seen me write down now. So I've got to check that out.
Thank me later.
Yeah.
Mentimeter, yes, absolutely. And there's more and more. One of the things that currently I'm most excited about is it was announced that Microsoft Teams used to see platforms like Slack, Google Hangouts as their competitor. Now they're seeing Zoom as their main competitor. And what that means is that if Zoom and Microsoft Teams are fighting it out, they're just going to keep getting better and better and better.
Oh, yeah.
I agree.
So excited. And as functionality improves and like things like Mentimeter, great, we've started to use it. As long as we're using it with purpose.
Yeah.
It's tempting, isn't it? To go, oh, we've got all of these bells and whistles we can play with. But you know, sometimes some of the best face-to-face sessions that you have, and by the way, just thinking off the top of my head, we're starting to challenge that phrase face-to-face.
Yeah, we are.
Face-to-face now?
Yeah.
So, but you get the idea. On-site training, for example, you can just some of the best training sessions are where there's no PowerPoint. It's just a conversation, maybe a flip chart, some post-it notes or a pen. And sometimes the technology can get in the way of the experience, and it's making sure that it enhances the whole virtual experience.
Yeah, I think simple is often better, I think, the virtual training. If you try and throw too much in there and people, again, you're relying on their technical ability, then yeah, I think it can all come crashing down.
No, I think it's true. And it's such an interesting, because I mean, I remember delivering and putting a program together for civil service a couple of years ago on digital change and digital integration. And one of the bits of research, some of the guys in America were talking about that digital change will be a thing of the past, and there was a bit of a pause. Yeah, interesting, because it just means change. The concept of digital will be kicked to one side, because it'll be such an apparent part of our society that we won't need to use the word. You get my point?
Yeah, it's like what is that?
Completely.
It's a phone, isn't it? But I still call it a mobile phone, which I'm showing my age now.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's everything. I mean, the irony of the mobile phone is the only thing I don't really actually do on that anymore is phone people on it, because I do everything else on it. I can't remember now. I mean, we do the last 6 meetings I've had this week. Well, all the meetings I've had last week and all the meetings I've had this week, I don't think there was one that I actually did on the phone as such, because they were all done by Zoom, Teams, and Adobe. And interested. General tips then. So we bring this to a conclusion, because I know you've got a very, very busy afternoon, and you've got to catch up with some of your courses. So in terms of, Catherine, because you've got extensive experience in it, and it's great to be able to share with people out there, you know, our sort of lay perspective and your more experienced background, you know, with the length of time that you've been doing it. Give me some general tips. Give me a couple of top tips while we run into the tail end of what's occurring. So, but I I've thoroughly enjoyed this, because
particularly
it seems to be on the same page with the experts. So, top tips from you.
Particularly, Catherine, in terms of those tips, you know, if you were converting on-site training material into the virtual world, you know, what would be the tips around doing that?
God, drop your pen.
Okay, where do I start? So, I've got so much I want to tell you. So the first thing is...
Pick your top 3.
Oh my God, a few that come to mind that I would say are really important. The first is, one of our key principles at the virtual training team is purpose, purpose, purpose. So if you are designing or delivering anything virtual, the reality is you're fighting for attention. Yeah, I mean, even in an in-person, face-to-face, what we're calling it, environment, people these days still get out their phone and check email. Imagine having the whole world at your fingertips and you're trying to focus on a workshop. So everything has to be relevant. Everything, every question that you ask, every slide that you share, every model, everything has to be super relevant. So starting with the end in mind is about really thinking clearly about what do we need our participants to do. Yeah, as a result. And then we get ruthless and we prioritize, and everything has a laser beam focus on that. And it's difficult sometimes when you convert in face-to-face content into virtual. Sometimes we try and shoehorn it. Is that the right term? Shoehorn? Yeah. Shoehorn it into that virtual environment, whereas we need to change it. We need to switch up some of the exercises. We need to change some of the models or content. So that would be the first thing. The next thing is about that expectations. And, you know, we talked earlier about when people walk into that virtual space with expectations. Often as virtual trainers, especially when you're new to virtual training, there's so much to think about. It's like driving a car, isn't it? And not only are you driving a car, you're expected to sing and be entertaining at the same time. So you've got like the platform and the chat box and the video and your slides and your content and people to deal with. That often what happens is the amazing personalities and energy that trainers have, if you're a good trainer, you've got that. They often forget to bring that with them to that environment, and it becomes quite formal, and it's like, relax, enjoy yourself, because if you're enjoying yourself and if you're relaxed and you're having fun, then your participants will as well. And you know what, if you get a couple of things wrong, or if the technology doesn't quite work, you'll be forgiven, because you're relaxed and you've got that rapport. So that's definitely something that I would say is my second tip. And now you're going to ask me for my third tip.
No pressure.
We
still get one of those drum rolls in here. Now that's another thing. Yeah.
I would say as the third tip is, let me think, backup plans. Having your backup plans and flexibility. So flexibility of time and how you run things. So as I said, time feels different in a virtual environment. So if somebody asks a killer question and a great conversation happens, you want to allow the time for that, because that's often where the magic works. But then you need to be able to flex your content that you've got prepared for later, rather than just rushing through it. So thinking about how can I adapt things, but also having backup plans for technology issues. So what if you get a power cut? It happens. What if your computer decides to do a reboot? when you didn't ask it to. Having those tech backups as well. So I've got underneath my desk a UPS, which is a uninterrupted power supply box.
I'll take your word for it.
Something like that.
We've got one in the building. Yeah, there's one.
Right, yeah, because if I live in the countryside and we do get power cuts from time to time, but my UPS kicks in and I've got 30 minutes of power still, so my PC can carry on. I'll have a laptop charged as backup as well. And if the power goes and your Wi-Fi goes, then you can always tether to your 4G, which I did for 3 months solid, by the way, because our internet was dodgy last year, and it worked a dream. So it's just thinking about, if it's really important, where's your flex, where's your backup?
Oh, some fantastic tips. I know we put you on the spot there, Big Catherine.
But that's the great training.
I'm sure our audience, and including us, will very appreciative, because there were some really good tips. Thank you.
Oh, Catherine, listen, I really, really appreciate it. I know we're conscious of time, but I've thoroughly enjoyed this, and it's great to sort of to meet, and I'm going to say that, to meet face to face. Because technically we are. It's not physical. So we take out, so I'm going to be very, very, very detailed in what word I use from now on in, because there's so much ambiguity around meeting face to face, and is there or not, I don't know. But that's a story for another day. But listen, I really, really appreciate your time. Thank you. It's been great, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it. Your top tip.
Absolutely. It's been great to meet you in the virtual world, Catherine.
This is going to be posted on LinkedIn. It's going to be on our YouTube channels as well. It's also going to be posted on some of the trainer sites because there's obviously closed groups and things that go on LinkedIn. So if you, and neither of you, I know Jack, you won't have any issues with this, but I'll probably look at uploading some of this stuff directly to them, because if anybody, I think one thing that lockdown and COVID has taught us is that level of engagement, that level of synergy, and people helping, because I'm connecting with people just to practice and play around things like virtual channels. I did one this morning with Andy, and I think it's been great. So top tips from me. Thank you very much. Excellent. Nice meeting you. Anything from you, Jack?
No, I meant to say, good to meet you again, as always, Wyn. And yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure, Catherine.
Oh, real joy. Thank you for having me.
Take care, Catherine. Speak to you soon.
Bye.